Imagine this. You're supporting someone, whether a child, an adult, or anyone in care, and you want to encourage them. You offer praise. Great job. Well done. Thinking this will reinforce positive behavior. What if I told you that praise, when used incorrectly, can actually backfire? That rather than building confidence, it can create anxiety, pressure, and even reinforce the very behaviors we want to reduce. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of praise, when it works, when it doesn't, and how we can use it more effectively to support those that we care for.
If you are caring for someone else, whether paid or unpaid, and no matter how many hours you do it, did you realise that you may be missing out on thousands of pounds of discounts for things that you may use every day? The Able to Care podcast is proud to be sponsored by the UK's #1 carers card. Started by two best friends who recognise that carers deserve better and are 100% committed to helping to change the lives of all carers and bringing them together as a strong community. Carers Card UK provides support, recognition and rewards. It offers reassurance by providing an ID card that helps access emergency information when needed, while also unlocking discounts, a wellbeing hub, a carers circle tool and a community through their app. All of this for less than the price of a box of chocolates a year. There are discounts on gym membership, days out, electrical goods, clothing and even glasses. Let others know you care while taking a little care of yourself with an ID card you can be proud of. Visit carerscarduk.co.uk/promo code/able to care today to order yours.
Hello and welcome to the Able to Care podcast, where we explore the realities of caregiving, education and behaviour support without the fluff, just practical insights and real talk. I'm Andy Baker, your host, and today we're tackling something that seems simple, but actually really complex. Now, I talk about this on quite a lot of the podcasts I go on, rather than necessarily this one. I talk about praise. Praise is one of those things that we tend to promote as being a force for change. Most of us assume that praise is always a good thing. After all, we want to encourage positive behavior, right? But the way we give praise matters. Used in the right way, it can boost confidence and reinforce good behaviors or proactive positive behaviors. Used incorrectly, it can actually create pressure, reduce motivation, or even make someone feel worse about themselves. Today, we're going to explore the science behind praise, why it works and when it doesn't. The dangers or the differences between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Dangers of overpraising, empty praise, or even sometimes we do it really badly, and how to use a praise effectively to truly reinforce positive outcomes. When we're looking at praise then, praise can be a powerful reinforcer. The one thing that's worth bearing in mind, it is what we call a secondary rather than a primary reinforcer. So it isn't like kind of food or water or things like that, which we class as primary reinforcers. It's something that tends to be kind of learnt over a period of time. Now, there is a natural element that praise is going to be something that does motivate or reinforce to some degree, because as a social species, we've always wanted to kind of fit in and connect with people. And therefore, other people in our tribe saying they like something or encouraging something probably means that we're going to do it. Okay, so it can work. And that's obviously, it does produce dopamine in the brain, which makes people feel good. So commonly, when we receive praise of some description, it creates a dopamine hit. And dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with kind of an expectation of pleasure. But not all praise is equal. And how we phrase it and when we deliver it matters. And praise can actually create dependency issues on external validation rather than developing self-motivation. So example, a child who is constantly told you're so clever may stop challenging themselves just in case they fail. Because straight away, by telling them you're so clever, well, then if they ever don't do something right, then straight away that's being told indirectly that they're not clever anymore. And this can actually create a fixed mindset, a limitation on how they see the world, rather than actually promoting growth. So the way we praise should encourage self-belief, not just temporary feel-good moments. And this is one of the problems with a lot of praise. Sometimes you get this validation seeking that let's say you've got a child who constantly comes over, and rather than just being really proud of their work, they want you to tell them how good their work is. They want you to express your joy and admiration of anything they've done. Now, the problem with that is that they're always going to be seeking that potential external validation. Where are they getting their internal validation from there? And this is the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. The key to a meaningful behavioral change is much more intrinsic motivation. If we take anything like trying to encourage somebody else to change a habit, it may work for a temporary period of time, but it's only if they truly want to change that habit, if they see the benefits in that change, that it's going to make a real difference. So doing something because it feels rewarding internally, whether it be through curiosity, enjoyment, or personal growth. Now, this is something that's a huge mistake has been made in the educational system related to kind of that external motivation rather than the intrinsic. That children only want to learn because they're reinforced or praised to. But obviously, we know that that isn't true. When I left school, that's when I found my joy for learning. I had it in the early stages of school, but I went through this period where learning suddenly became more about ticking the box and hitting the grade, rather than just because I was fascinated, enjoying learning about the subject. There were certain times when it worked differently, and I've spoken about in that podcast, like when I was reading the book The Hobbit and we turned it into a game, and I was so engaged in that. When I left school, that's when I then really started discovering the joy of learning, because I started having choice over what I learned, for one, and therefore I felt a sense of autonomy, but I also felt a connection and enjoyment of what I was picking up. And the way it was presented was so different because it was allowing me to kind of connect with the information rather than just being told I had to because of the outcome. A wonderful example of this is, so I quite enjoy going to the theatre and watching a play or watching a musical now. But when I was at school, I did theatre studies and I hated it. I didn't like going to play, and it put me off enjoying plays for a long time because suddenly I couldn't just go and enjoy the experience. It was all about what I should be looking at and what the essay that I was going to have to write at the end of it, which just felt more of a pressure rather than being able to enjoy the experience itself, because I needed to get a good mark on the essay rather than just being able to enjoy telling anybody else what I'd just seen, what I liked about it, and what I enjoyed. So one thing when we're looking at intrinsic and extrinsic motivation is we want to try and make sure that we're promoting that they feel good about it, they enjoy it. And extrinsic motivation, doing something for reward or to avoid punishment, is only a temporary solution, but it leads down a bad path in some ways. Look at the need that people have for connecting with electronic devices and that external validation and praise through likes or clicks or whatever it is that they're desperately seeking. If we rely too much on external praise, then we reduce that intrinsic motivation. So many things that we do in life, like going for a job or even going to the gym, and nothing because anybody else is telling you well done. It has to be that promotion of me going well done for me for succeeding. Also, let's say we take an example, like a child who really enjoyed drawing, but they may stop doing it for fun if they only receive praise when they do it well. Because then if it's no longer about the joy of doing it, it's more the outcome. There was a really interesting experiment that was done related to this, actually, where an experimenter gave a child a puzzle. And in two different versions of the experiment, a control group and then a test group, in the test group, the child was offered a reward for completing the puzzle. In the other group, the child wasn't offered a reward for completing the puzzle. Now, both children completed the puzzle, or both sets of children completed the puzzle. The really interesting thing was when the experimenter then left the room, leaving this child on their own with the puzzle. When the child had received a reward for completing the puzzle, quite often the child never touched the puzzle again. Whereas in the group where they'd just been encouraged to solve the puzzle, most of the time when the experimenter left the room, they started playing with the puzzle again. Because in the rewarded group, the reward wasn't the puzzle itself, it was the thing they got at the end of it. But in the group without the praise, without the reward, the puzzle was the reward. The enjoyment of doing it, the challenge of doing it, the completion of doing it was an intrinsic motivator, which meant that they wanted to play with that puzzle again because they get that same dopamine hit from the success of doing it rather than the external dopamine hit from somebody else saying well done or giving them a prize. So shifting from you're so talented at drawing to, I love how much effort you put into that. It's a subtle difference, but it's really important, both for growth mindset, but also because we're focusing on the process rather than the outcomes. Whenever we're praising, we should never praise either the individual or the outcome. We should always try to aim to praise the process. Well done for working so hard. Well done for thinking around that in that way. Well done for just sitting there and doing it for that long. Well done for persevering with it. Those are all things that we want to be repeated and are genuinely worthwhile traits. And it means that then maybe if I don't do something well, maybe it didn't work as hard this time, rather than maybe I'm not clever anymore, or I'm only worthwhile if I get 10 out of 10 rather than 9 out of 10. We have to be mindful as well when we're praising one person, how we may be indirectly criticizing somebody else. So for example, if I say to one person, that was amazing, you're so clever, because they completed something, but somebody over there hasn't completed it yet. Well, indirectly, we've told them that they're not great, that they're not good enough, without even realizing. So we need to be very, very specific with our praise. The other thing that could be useful as well, if you do have somebody that seems to seek external validation, seems to seek that praise from an external source, rather than saying well done, or rather than saying good job, or even commenting on anything you particularly like about it, just demonstrate interest. Ask them to tell you what they like about it, why they made the choices that they made. So let's say if I drew you a picture, for instance, rather than going, hey, that's brilliant, or knowing how badly my drawing is, you'd probably go, that's awful. But if you want to improve, we focus on something we like, we focus on something that's beneficial, okay? But rather than going, hey, that's great, you might sort of go, that's really interesting. I'm wondering, why did you choose to do it that color? What was that color? Why did you choose it? Because then I'm going to tell you, well, I thought about this and it may just because, well, I just thought it'd look quite nice. That's really interesting. And do you think it looks nice? And we can then go into me telling you why I made the choices I did, why I had the autonomy over it, why I was curious about trying this. Maybe I've always seen gray elephants, but I just wanted to try out a green elephant just to see what it looked like. Well, that's amazing. That's curiosity. That's a positive attribute to develop. We also need to be careful of kind of overpraising. Overpraising can actually reduce confidence, especially if it's too general, like good job at everything. Children aren't stupid, or individuals are stupid. If you're praising me for something else that everybody else seems to be doing okay, it may just feel a little bit patronizing. Empty praise like you're amazing without context can actually make people feel more pressure rather than encouraged. It's also you're so smart can avoid kind of the fixed mindset trap is if someone's always told you're so smart, then they may not challenge themselves, or they may avoid challenges to protect that label. If you think I'm so smart, but if I've got a risk of not doing this very well or failing at this, then actually then I need to not try just in case I lose that label as a result. So as I said, we always aim to use process-based praise, but also make sure that we're being specific with our praise. Being overly general can actually, again, produce anxiety. Let me give you an example of this. I often refer to this on courses where we tend to assume that praise is a good thing. The problem is, if my core beliefs about myself are that I am not good enough, that I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'm stupid, I constantly make mistakes, whatever it is, if those are my true beliefs about myself, then you tell me you think I'm great or amazing or good job or anything like that. You've now set your expectations of me up at 10, but I believe in myself that I'm only a 2. So I know I'm never going to be able to meet your 10 level of expectation. In fact, it makes me feel anxious and overwhelmed, and there's too much pressure on me to be able to achieve that. So I now need to do something. I need to sabotage your 10 opinion of me by doing something bad, ruining something, doing something negatively to take that control back, to remind you that I'm only a 2, or to justify to myself why I feel I'm only a 2. Now, that may be really hard concept for people to understand, but when you've got individuals who've got that learned helplessness, they've got those negative core beliefs about themselves, praise can actually cause them to act out in maladaptive or negative ways and sabotage good things because they don't think they deserve them, or they can't cope with the expectations of them, or for whatever reason. Now, that doesn't mean we should then stop praise altogether, but we may need to make it very indirect. We may need to make it very specific. We need to focus on the process, as I say, rather than the outcome. We need to focus on the behavior rather than the person as well. Really important that not only should we never say naughty child, but we should always never say good child either, really, because that's labeling them with their behavior rather than them being separate from their behavior. That they are good just because they are. Their behavior is separate from their personality through their attributes. Now, that can be really, all of this can be quite difficult to kind of change over and change your strategies. A few things we can do. Be specific. Instead of good job, say, I really like the way you took the time to solve that problem. Or rather than going, well done for washing up, just say, I really appreciated the fact that you washed up. That's helped me because I don't have to do that anymore. So you're being very explicit of why that particular thing matters to you, rather than it just being admiration, praise. And sometimes appreciation is a genuine praise rather than the kind of the well done. Thank you so much. That was really helpful to me. Or I really enjoyed doing that with you. So you're putting it on you rather than on them. It's how your experience of it. Praise effort, not ability as well. Instead of you're so smart, say, I love how you kept trying even when it was hard. And you can say that to anybody, because then universally we're not saying you're not good enough or you are good enough through the outcomes. We're just saying that working hard is all we're looking for. Make praise part of feedback, not flattery as well. So sometimes some of you will have heard of the kind of the poo sandwich before, where feedback is positive, negative, positive. And feedback is far better than praise. This is what I really liked about it. This is maybe what you could do differently next time, but this is generally the outcome that you had and the benefits that it produced. That's much more of a restorative approach. So rather than praise, feedback is often far more beneficial for people. That's something you can learn from. And constantly looking at, hey, you're really good. There's always room for improvement, but you're still really good. And not dialectic statements of those two opposing things. You're really good, but there's always room for growth. Can be really positive for helping people to have a resilient mindset. That when they get some criticism, it's not because it doesn't mean they're not good enough. It just means they didn't do as well as expected in that moment. So can they do better next time? One big thing, when we're looking at motivation doesn't necessarily come from extrinsic sources. In fact, it can work against. And this is corporate or care or child, adult, doesn't really matter. Encourage autonomy. How did they feel about it? Why did they make those choices? How could they, or what would they have liked to have done better or differently next time? So it's all about their experience and their control over that situation. Also, I'll see, encouragement is good. Encouragement focuses on effort and potential rather than just the results. Okay, you did so much better than last time. That was, even if it was just one better, that's still really good. I can tell that you're improving. So then that's more encouragement rather than praise, which isn't necessarily a bad thing either. A few other little tips I'll give you related to praise. If you encounter somebody that praise is a bit too intense for them to do directly, find indirect ways of offering that praise. For some individuals and kids and stuff like that, especially kind of teenagers, they may struggle, but they may be able to cope with a text message going, thank you so much. Okay. Or they may be able to cope with a little Post-it note under their door, just going, I really appreciate that. You might even find that the third party approach of letting them catch you talking to somebody else and kind of praising or saying what you enjoyed about their behavior or about their actions may have done. One last thing that can be also useful or something to think about. Many adults I know when it comes to children sometimes are very good at giving praise, but then they take it away again. So for instance, let's say that you asked somebody to do the washing up. You then go in and they've done it. And rather than just going, thank you so much for doing that, there's this slightly sarcastic kind of, flipping heck, you've actually done it. That's not actually praise. That's actually criticism. You're pointing out the times they haven't rather than the time that they have. Another example of this is, let's say, a parent who goes shopping with a child, for instance. And then at the end of the shopping, the parent goes, now that was really good. You were such a good boy. Okay, maybe that, as we've spoken about, a little bit indirect, not ideal. But then the parent does something really bad. We should go, now, why can't you do it like that every time? So straight away, I giveth and I take away. I show my appreciation, but then I just reminded you how you usually mess up, how you usually get it wrong. Now, all of these, think about yourself from let's say, make yourself an employer, put your mindset in the head of an employer. How do you feel about the way that a manager or boss praises you? Was it important that they focus on what you did right, the process, rather than the outcome sometimes? Do you think you'd work harder for somebody if they recognize the work you'd put in, despite maybe the outcome not being ideal? So think about being a good manager of anybody you're supporting or working with, whether that be a partner, whether it be a child, whether it be somebody you're looking after professionally or voluntarily. So the takeaway from today, praise can be a powerful tool, but it shouldn't just be about making people feel good. It's about reinforcing right behaviors in a way that builds long-term confidence. It's more about connection and social kind of connectivity rather than just external validation. Use specific evidence-based praise rather than just vague compliments. Encourage that intrinsic motivation so people don't become dependent on that external approval. We want them to be able to say well done to them. Avoid overpraise or empty praise or just those throwaway statements of well done. And also be careful to patronize, not to patronize. I once heard a carer saying good girl or well done. I know some people don't mind that, but well done to a lady who just managed to turn herself in bed. It's like, she just turned herself in bed. Why saying well done? Thank you for helping you would have probably been more appropriate. Otherwise, it's a bit patronizing. And also try and focus on the outcomes we want, which is growth, improvement in quality of life, the ability for them to enjoy doing things themselves, to make choices, to demonstrate autonomy, to succeed and master new things. So try and make sure when you're reinforcing behaviors, focus on the ones that lead to growth and benefit for the person themselves, not just about what makes us feel good in the moment. So next time you catch yourself saying good job, pause and think, what exactly am I praising? Is it effort? Is it resilience? Is it progress? That small shift can actually make a big difference. If you found today's episode useful, don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, and share with somebody who might need it, and let us know your thoughts. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Have you ever encountered an adult or child's behaviour that has felt difficult, overwhelming, or challenging? Have you sometimes felt at a loss of what to do, or know that you didn't handle it quite right? People are complex and unpredictable, and their behaviour can be like the weather. We've all made the mistake of looking out the window and feeling safe to wear shorts, but 5 minutes later wishing for an umbrella. What if, like a weatherman, you understood how humidity, temperature and pressure all come together to cause the weather, allowing you to better prepare, predict and respond and prevent ever having a picnic ruined by a thunderstorm ever again? My book, called Targeting the Positive with Behaviours that Challenge, helps you to become the weatherman of behaviour. It provides you with a toolkit to increase competency, confidence, resilience and empathy, so you feel more assured about how to respond to distressed or dysregulated behaviours in others, including those affected by trauma, mental health, neurodiversity, learning disabilities or dementia. Build better connections, achieve de-escalation and improve outcomes for yourself and those you engage with my celebrated 6-stage target model, a step-by-step process to reduce distress for everyone. Discover my empowering, person-centered guide in Targeting the Positive, written by me, Andy Baker, available from online bookstores worldwide. Find a link in the description and order today.